The apex predator of 1,000 worlds meets the persistence hunter of a single death world. Warlord Zilia's third set of lungs burned, demanding oxygen the Aegis station ring couldn't supply fast enough. Her 4 plasma blades, humming with lethal heat, carved nothing but empty space. 3 paces away stood Terran Captain Elias Thorne. He wasn't bleeding. He wasn't even breathing hard. He adjusted the collar of his uniform, his dark eyes devoid of panic. They brought 4 plasma blades to a battle of profound patience. It had all started with a laugh. 3 days ago, the undefeated warlord had publicly ridiculed the Terran coalition. Zilia, towering at 7 feet and corded with dense muscle, demanded a demonstration of Terran strength before she would consider a treaty. When Elias stepped into the hyper-illuminated sands of the arena wearing 0 armor and carrying no weapons, the laughter from the stadium had been deafening. 1 billion spectators laughed at the fragile Terran, but only the oldest races remembered what happens when you corner one. Truth is, Elias felt the fear. The stadium lights baked the white sand, the heat radiating through his boots. He remembered the sharp tang of ozone when Zilia first ignited her weapons, calling him a fragile twig. Biologically, she was correct. The Dravokian could crush a transport hull. But Elias hadn't spent his transit time running combat simulations. He had spent it staring at holographic medical charts, memorizing the blind spots of a species that never needed to evolve past unearned brute force. Out on the sand, Xylia roared. The sound vibrated deep in Elias's chest, a bone-rattling frequency designed to paralyze prey. She lunged, a terrifying whirlwind of violet plasma. Elias didn't block. He stepped right, just a fraction. The plasma hissed an inch from his cheek, the heat singing the tiny hairs on his skin. He kept moving, a pivot, a duck, a steady retreat. Evolution on Earth didn't favor the ones who hit the hardest. It favored the ones who simply refused to stop walking. Zilia swung again, her upper right arm overcommitting. The thick cord of alien muscle twitched. Elias locked his gaze onto it. There it was, the microscopic lag in her reaction time, the ragged intake of air. He was studying the architecture of her exhaustion. Every missed strike drained her biological reserves. In fact, the entire match had become a psychological dissection. Elias dictated the rhythm, forcing her to burn out while he barely broke a sweat. The stadium's laughter had long since died, replaced by a tense, restless murmur echoing from the bleachers. Elias kept his breathing steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The trap was set. He watched the massive alien stumble, her lowest blade dragging sluggishly through the sand. He didn't need a weapon. He just needed to wait for her nervous system to fracture. She swung again. The strike was sloppy, too wide. The massive muscles in her thorax trembled under the extreme strain of oxygen debt. Elias stepped inside her guard. Not away, but directly into the sweltering heat of the faltering plasma blade. The air smelled sharply of burnt ozone and copper. He struck, 2 fingers perfectly rigid, driven into the soft depression just beneath Xylia's secondary collarbone, a Dravokian nerve nexus. Zilia gasped. Her upper right arm went completely dead. The plasma hilt slipped from her massive fingers, hitting the sand with a muted hiss. She roared in confusion, twisting to bring her lower left blade around in a desperate arc. Elias was already gone. He ducked under the swipe, pivoting on his heel. He drove the base of his palm into the juncture at the bottom of her thoracic spine. A second nexus. Her lower legs buckled. The giant alien dropped to one knee, the impact shuddering through the arena floor. 2 more blades powered down, their energy cells auto-locking as they slipped from her numb grip. Truth is, he didn't need to hit her hard. The biology did the work for him. The neural shock wave cascaded through her frame, overloading the motor functions that commanded her immense strength. She fought it. Of course she did. Zilia channeled every ounce of her remaining willpower into her last functional arm, thrusting the final violet blade toward his chest. Elias simply caught her wrist. He didn't overpower her. He let her own momentum carry the arm forward, guiding it off-center, while his other hand found the cluster of ganglia behind her jaw. A precise, sharp pinch. The fight was over. Zilia collapsed backward into the white sand. The final plasma blade deactivated. She couldn't move her limbs. She could barely turn her head. Her 4 eyes locked onto the Terran standing over her. The stadium went entirely still. A billion spectators held their breath, waiting for the conqueror to claim his trophy. The ancient rules of the Aegis rings demanded a killing blow. Ilias looked down at the paralyzed warlord. Her chest heaved in jagged, desperate rhythms. The violet blood pulsing in her neck spoke of total systemic exhaustion. His hours staring at medical charts had paid off. Meticulous preparation had systematically neutralized every overwhelming advantage she possessed. But Elias hadn't come to kill. He knelt in the hot sand. The stadium lights reflected in Xylia's dilated pupils. She expected the end. She braced for the final, humiliating strike that would sever her command forever. Instead, Elias reached down. He pulled a small field canteen from his belt, unscrewed the cap, and pressed it gently to her parched lips. She swallowed reflexively, choking slightly on the cool water. The hostility in her gaze fractured, replaced by uncomprehending shock. He didn't gloat. He simply offered his hand, waiting patiently as the neural block began to fade. Xylia understood power, but as she looked at the fragile Terran who had dismantled her without drawing a drop of blood, she realized she knew nothing about true strength. She saw the terrifying weight of a species that knew exactly how to destroy its enemies, yet chose to stop. Elias stood, deliberately turning his back on the warlord. He walked toward the arena gates, exposing his spine, a gesture of absolute trust. In that quiet, impossible moment, the Dravokian ascendancy didn't just lose a mock battle. They gained a lifelong ally.